J'aimerais débuter notre rencontre. I call this meeting to order. Bonjour à vous tous. Welcome to the meeting number 21 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Veterans Affairs. Pursuant to the motion adopted on September 18 of 2025, the committee is meeting to resume its study on barriers to entrepreneurship among veterans. Avant de continuer, j'aimerais demander à tous les participants en personne de consulter les lignes directrices inscrites sur les cartes qui se trouvent sur la table. Ces mesures sont en place pour aider à prévenir.
These measures are in place to prevent audio incidents and feedback and to protect the health and safety of all participants, including our interpreters. And thank you to our interpreters. There is also a QR code on that card that brings you to an awareness video. For members in the room, if you would like to speak, please raise your hand. For those on Zoom, but I don't believe there are any on Zoom, so we don't have to go forward with that. But the clerk and I will do our best to maintain a speaking order, and we would like to thank you for your patience and your understanding.
I would now like to welcome our witnesses. As individuals, we have Mrs. Angela Mondu. She is joining us by video conference. She is a veteran, and we look forward to hear. And thank you, Mrs. Mondu, for your service. We also have in person Mr. Fraser Zerebeki, who is a veteran, and thank you very much for joining us. Nous avons aussi Café Félin.
We also have with us from Café Félin Malangosha, Miss Elisa Sear, retired corporal. Thank you for your service, and owner. Witnesses will start by giving you 5 minutes for your opening remarks. Once all of the witnesses have had the time to speak, we will move on to a Q&A with committee members.
Invite, si c'est correct avec vous, Madame Sear.
If that's all right, we'll start with Miss Sear. Madam Chair, members of the committee, I would like to thank you for giving me the time to speak today. I am a veteran from the Canadian Armed Forces, and I'm an entrepreneur. I am also the founder of Café Félin Malangosha, situated in Quebec City, in an area that was historic for recruitment during the First World War. In the 70s, it became Le Vet le Vétéran, a tavern, and is now a space for people to gather and to offer support to veterans and to the community. When I left the uniform, I thought that the hardest part of my life was behind me. But in reality, I was going to start a new battle, and that was entrepreneurship. My cafe is an inclusive space. It became a safe space for veterans and first responders. It seeks to have social inclusion and to help people with mental health issues, for example, autism and ADHD. I chose to become an entrepreneur following my military service, not for financial reasons, but because I needed to rebuild myself. Following my service and following a diagnosis for PTSD, I had physical injuries to my knees, my wrist, my neck. I had fibromyalgia. It's very difficult to find a job, and so I created a safe job for myself. I wanted to continue to give back. We want to be able to continue to serve and protect, but differently. I faced serious challenges in this entrepreneurship. The first was institutional. Support programs are not made to reflect the reality of veterans. The administrative language is complex. Criteria are quite rigid. Support is impersonal. When we have invisible wounds, it is quite difficult, and many veterans give up not because they have a lack of capacity, but because they are exhausted from the administrative burden. Next has to do with financial support. Businesses like mine have a hard time fitting in traditional frameworks. Café Félin is focused on well-being, the well-being of the veteran community, and it is often seen as being marginal, even though it has a real impact that is measurable. I frequently had to move forward without a social safety net. My savings, my pension helped me keep the cafe afloat and allows me to continue supporting veterans, and when we take them out to see shows and bring them to restaurants, we try to get them out of isolation, and I do that through my own salary, my own funding. The third obstacle is the burden, the mental burden, the psychological burden. It requires a human cost. There is no entrepreneurial support that factors in our reality. There are reglementary and municipal challenges as well. A cafe including animals, for example. This added an additional level of complexity without any adapted support. That said, I was able to persevere thanks to competencies that I acquired through the armed forces, resiliency, adaptability, and a sense of duty. That said, those qualities should not be a prerequisite in order to offer support to entrepreneurs. Veterans have entrepreneurial abilities, and in order to allow them to thrive, there needs to be flexible programs that are specialized and adapted to the realities of veterans. I am here to improve the system. I want future veterans to be paid, but as entrepreneurs, I don't want them to be discouraged before they are even be able to start. Thank you for the attention that you are giving to this essential study. Thank you very much, Ms. Cyr.
Invite Mr. Zerebeki for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chair and honorable members of this committee. Thank you for welcoming me back to testify. I appreciate the seriousness of which this committee approaches Veterans Affairs. My name is Fraser Zerebeki. I served in the Canadian Armed Forces for 10 years, from 2007 to 2017. I joined as a high school educated private at age of 22 and released as a corporal and disability beneficiary. In 2009, I deployed to Afghanistan as a frontline soldier and combat engineer. Like many veterans, my transition out of uniform was difficult. And like many veterans, it was also marked by achievement. Those two things often coexist. Veterans who complete demanding training, operational tours, and leadership courses tend to share certain traits: exceptional drive, a high tolerance for risk, and deeply ingrained character attributes forged under pressure. Discipline, accountability, mission focus, loyalty. Veterans are not short on ability. Where we are short on is access. As I began my transition, I started a design company to support my family while still serving and during my release period. I received no business support from Veterans Affairs or the Canadian Armed Forces. That business ultimately folded when I reached final release. I used my education and training benefit to complete a graduate certificate in project management, and after graduating, I entered the custom home building industry as a project manager. The company I worked for struggled. An opportunity arose for me to purchase that business and become an entrepreneur. I had experience, I had a plan. What I did not have was access to capital. No lender would finance to me. There were no veteran-specific pathways, no shared risk models, and no institutional support. That opportunity passed because of lack of access. I entered the public service, working at Service Canada and the Canadian Revenue Agency. Recognizing gaps in my business knowledge, I later entered the Ivey Business School Executive MBA program and graduated in 2022. That education led me into healthcare operations, where I worked as an executive role supporting independent dental practices. The experience revealed something very important to me. Dentists, like veterans, often lack formal business training. but unlike veterans, dentists have access to capital. Banks lend to them readily. Veterans, by contrast, either cannot borrow at all or offer terms that place exceptional risk on the individual. I'm currently building a third business. It's still in startup mode, and it will take years to become viable. This is the reality many veterans face. We have very strong ideas. We work relentlessly, but we start from zero. We bankroll our own ventures. We discover gaps in competence, training, and education only after making costly mistakes. The reality is that repeated business failures combined with employment insecurity carry consequences far beyond the balance sheet. I lost my home. The financial strain contributed to the end of my marriage and placed sustained stress on my 3 daughters. I share this not for sympathy, but because it reflects a pattern that I have seen repeatedly amongst veterans. Attempting entrepreneurship without institutional support. I've been fortunate to move across sectors. I've been a college professor, hospital board member, and leadership consultant. I worked with Pathfinder Leadership Associates, bringing military leaders into advisory and leadership development roles into organizations such as the Ivey Business School and the Business Development Bank of Canada. Through those experiences, I saw a model that does work. BDC provides funding alongside executive advisory support and education. It's a long-term relationship. It's not charity, it's investment. And that brings me to my central recommendation. I'm not here to suggest that adding another benefit through Veterans Affairs. I'm proposing the creation of a federal bank dedicated to veterans and veteran entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is about growth, investment, and shared risk. I envision 3 streams. First, accessible financing for veterans willing to take risk, but at terms that allow business to survive. Low interest lending, deferred interest options, and rates that do not cripple startup. Second, grant funding for ventures that provide broader public benefit to Canadians. Third, a shared equity development stream where the bank provides capital and advisory support in exchange for equity. In this model, the government becomes a true partner to veterans. The risk is shared, the upside is shared. Canadians benefit when veteran-led businesses succeed. Alongside this, education benefits must be strengthened. Veterans often take longer to determine their post-service path. Support should remain accessible throughout a veteran's life. Successful veterans-led businesses create jobs. They strengthen families. They contribute to economic stability and community well-being. Thank you for your time. I welcome your questions.
We will now invite Mrs. Mondu for 5 minutes, and thank you very much for your service and for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Madame la Présidente and members of the committee. Thank you for the invitation. I'm a retired captain, and I served in Canadian Forces Europe Command Center during Operation Desert Storm, as well as leading a large deployment into former Yugoslavia under fire. I've spent over 20 years in the tech sector, working at both Nortel Networks and those years. Currently, I'm the CEO of a
Madame Mondu, I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to interrupt you. Je suis vraiment désolée. We're having some technical problem with your connectivity. Sometimes we cannot hear you. Je suis vraiment désolée. Juste
I apologize. We're going to get someone to call you. One of our IT ambassadors is going to call you to try to see if we can solve the problem.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Merci. Maybe we'll suspend just for a minute or two. Merci.
and members of the committee. I think this is a very important discussion. I'm not sure if you heard my background. I have spent 9 years in the military and quite a bit of experience there, as well as 20 years in the tech sector with Nortel Networks and BlackBerry. And then for the discussion today, 9 years as an entrepreneur myself. And right now I'm running a defense and AI company with my husband, who's also a military veteran in defense and AI. I'm here today because I believe that Canada is leaving a significant asset on the table in terms of how we support our veterans. We have great systems that support and are intentionally designed to support entrepreneurs and employees, in particular from underrepresented groups. Military veterans are not receiving this same intentional focus. Case in point, I just recently filled out an application for the Regional Defense Investment Initiative. And as our company 5GCX was asked, would we be interested in hiring underrepresented employees, including women, including Indigenous peoples and newcomers? Military veterans were not included as an option. I believe that veterans have to be considered a national strategic asset and supported like all other Canadians. We're trained for uncertainty, highly accountable for outcomes, used to leading under pressure, and these strengths translate directly into business and scaling companies, including the challenges of being an entrepreneur. And Canada needs leaders like the military in the sectors that we're really investing in today: defense, security, cyber, technology. I have 3 recommendations that I believe would reduce barriers to educate and enable veterans and veteran-led firms. First and foremost is to create a one-stop shop veteran entrepreneurship pathway with a 12 to 24-month navigation support. You heard already from 2 other veterans the challenges that families face in transition. I've lived that myself. We don't have the coherent pathways established after our members have served to transition into the world of entrepreneurship, as you also heard from Madame Cyr. The goal of this national entrepreneurship pathway for veterans would, like I said, be a one-stop shop kickstart. It would connect veterans to other successful veterans that are entrepreneurs now, to create communities, provide case managers for entrepreneurship, the benefits, the training, the financing, the support that's required for these scale-up communities. Also, I think an important area that could be led or supported through this pathway, the government funds a significant amount of money for startups and scale-ups through the global innovation clusters, NGen, Scale AI, and many accelerators, Mars, OCI, Communitech. So my second recommendation is to create a specifically defense tech accelerator, which obviously would support the pairing of veteran leaders into this defense tech space that is being heavily invested in right now by the forces. We're obviously seeing a lot of funding right now and a rapid increase in Canada with defense tech startups. I'm a prime example, driven by our current global instability. At the same time, we have thousands of military veterans with deep expertise in defense. So my recommendation is to leverage the tech accelerator model that exists and really focus that in the defense tech space, where we can really pair military members, members in transition, with the growing space of defense and defense technology. Last but not least, I would use this defense tech accelerator community to help. One of the biggest barriers we heard as well from Fraser, Monsieur Zerebecki, sorry, Fraser. The biggest challenge for any entrepreneur is runway. That's capital. And the Defense Tech Accelerator could play a critical role in facilitating education around scaling up a company, access to capital that exists, the BDC opportunities, the other accelerators out there. This accelerator itself perhaps could be part of that government funding as well, all of those procurement enablers. So in closing, I really would like to just emphasize that we've already invested millions of dollars in our military members. We've trained them. They're phenomenal, a resource for Canada. And I think right now, with our focus as a nation on the accelerated defense and security requirements in the current geopolitical space, And this would make so much sense for the nation. And I believe that this House has the power to support that kind of change.
Thank you very much, Madame Mondoux. Thank you. We will now open the floor for 6 minutes for each member. I will start with Mrs. Wagenthal for 6 minutes.
I really appreciate you all being here. We have a great variety in the room, which is not unusual when we think of entrepreneurs. They come in many different shapes and sizes and desires. And certainly we're seeing that today. Fraser, I have a question for you. In your response, you shared your journey, and you have achieved a great deal throughout that journey. You also, as you mentioned, failed as an entrepreneur. I can't help but think in the back of my head, I'm hearing some folks in VAC saying, well, you've done really good at other things. Why don't you just do that? So there's that I would like a bit of feedback on. And also, with your recommendations, you also talked about what you've lost personally in losing your home, your relationship with your wife, and concerns around your children. Would that have been different in your life if these other circumstances had been in place the way you're suggesting?
I think that's a great point. It's so hard to say in hindsight, right? But it certainly hasn't been an easy life. The military in my 10 years was very difficult on family and myself, right? Going through heck of a lot of change and loss over the years, and losing comrades and friends, and dealing with my own personal struggles with depression and anxiety. So, that journey doesn't stop when you leave the military, and some of those echoes of sort of trauma are with your family too. So I certainly appreciate everything that my family sort of went through on this path. Would things be different if things had clicked? Probably, actually, yeah. Certainly changing careers multiple times in several different business ventures put a heck of a lot of stress on myself and my family. But I think that goes to what some of the other witnesses have said in this committee so far, is that we have this resilience and perseverance to just keep going despite failures and losses, and that's why I'm still successful today. Got a great career, great job, and still a successful business entrepreneur. But it could have been a lot easier.
Sure. So I appreciate that. So this idea of, you suggested that these educational benefits need to be available throughout your lifetime. I often hear, when you release for whatever reason, it takes time to get to where you see yourself being, with all the things that you mentioned here as having to deal with, that the average person in Canada does not deal with. Let's be very frank about that. So when you hear the suggestions from Ms. Mondoux and what you've suggested, is this something that you see should be available to veterans ongoing?
Yeah, I especially think that in our changing climate, we're at a new world order, to quote some...
That's what I hear.
Yes, the quote around the room. So why not look at continuing benefits? So it's not just a one-time thing. We have to retrain our veterans that are already out there, that have maybe already accessed their training benefit, but they need to get back into the tech sector. They need to get back into defense. They need to be entrepreneurs. They need to help build the fabric of this country so that we are more resilient as a nation. So that's where we should invest. Absolutely.
Very good. Thank you. So, Lisa, your scenario is very different. You have found a way to improve your own life by providing an opportunity for other people that you felt you needed, and really took on a great deal of that resilience and determination to provide an opportunity for other veterans to do the same. Now, that's called a small business, I think, in many ways, when you start out at least. So what is your goal? What would you love to see if you could see what you envisioned here grow to be something even greater?
Merci pour cette belle question.
Thank you for the question. My dream would be to have some continuity with the cafe. And you need a lot of money for that. As I mentioned, currently I am paying for things out of pocket. But my ultimate goal, and for the last 7 years, my goal has been to have a way to offer even more support because I see way too much suffering and too much loss, too many suicides. Last year, for example, a 79-year-old veteran took his own life. 79 years old. We carried out interventions with that person, and we want to have a process. We want to have a second safe space, a bunker. We're not sure what we're going to call it just yet, but we want to be able to have an impact on this crisis. Veterans know what it feels like, but as Mr. Fraser was saying, we want to be able to go to that space before being completely overwhelmed. And secondly, we want veterans to be able to go on vacations with their families, but they're not able to stay at a hotel because it stresses them out and causes too much panic. Thank you, Ms. Cyr. Thank you very much for your comments.
Madame Auguste.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to thank all of our witnesses. Thank you for your service to Canada. Ms. Cyr, you appeared before the committee in 2023, and you stated that purchasing your restaurant saved your life. And I would like for you to tell us how becoming an entrepreneur was a decisive moment for you. That was a great question. I was a hair away from taking my own life. I had experienced things in the armed forces, psychological and physical harassment. I was being called. People were coming to my house. I couldn't leave my home. I was isolated, so I understand isolation. I was stressed, hypervigilant. And one morning, one of my friends took me to a coffee shop, and I have a service dog here who saved my life in 2015. I wasn't a cat person at the time, but my friend brought me to this cafe, and it was a really small spot. It was very cute, and a few months later, it was up for sale, and she told me that we should buy it, and I was like, "You're crazy, I can't buy this." I would want to take them all home. I have a hard time going to the grocery store. And she was saying, well, with fibromyalgia and all these things, well, at night we're all often overthinking, you know. And so I found myself having a bunch of ideas and saying that this could be my safe space outside of my home because my home was no longer a safe space. So that could be that space. And if it could be my safe space, it could be a safe space for those like me. And so when I'm not feeling well, I look at the stars. And so my restaurant became my stars. It's open every day. Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, Boxing Day, New Year's Eve, we organize suppers for veterans. And this allows me to continue to serve. Of course, the hypervigilance is still there, but it's less present. And when I hear comments and I hear veterans moving forward and that we're moving forward together, well, these are even more stars that we get to add to our sky. And for the cats, well, we decided to have purebred cats to be a little bit different. We wanted to give them names of our fallen colleagues. We wanted to be able to allow them to serve differently as well and give them a second chance. And we wanted to honor them. And we wanted Canadians to better understand who we are and what we've been through. And when people were coming to visit and we're a different space, and that led me to speaking and explaining, because we have employees that are very different. And my psychologist told me that I'm doing therapy every day by explaining who I am, what I do, what I used to do, without going into detail, of course, but I was focusing on the present and the things that are positive. And so this doesn't allow me to forget the past or the harassment that I faced, but it certainly allowed me to move forward. And now, if I'm asked to testify here, and recently I received a mention, and that tells me that I'm on the right path and that I'm moving forward. We won't be able to change the world overnight, but little things over time, when you hear us, when you listen to us, well, that's already a first step. We know that nothing's going to change overnight, but it is a first step to just listen to us, to hear the shortcomings that and the challenges that we're facing, and by trying to implement actions in order to help us move forward. And I would like to thank you for that. Thank you so much. And congratulations for that honorable mention by the minister. Your cafe seems to be a great space in your community. I see here that you help youth in foster care, you give back toys. Why choose such a social company? Well, as a veteran, and this also comes from my youth, of course, but at 31 years old, I decided to join the Army. I had focused on psychology and nursing. I was told as a child that I was not going to live very long, and I wanted to give back. And I think that life gave me a second, a third, a fourth chance. And with that cafe, we try to not have a poker face. We try to tell people that we offer support, that we want to help them. And we want that difference to be accepted. Thank you very much, Ms. Cyr. It's greatly appreciated. Ms. Gaudreau, you have 6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I have a few questions for Ms. Lisa, but for Mr. Fraser, before I start, when we're talking about financial challenges, I would like to know why you were refused financial support. Is it because you were a veteran?
No, it wasn't because I was a veteran. It's because I didn't have an established business with a year of revenue. That's a real hurdle. Like, there's very few people out there that are willing to assign you a check that's actually going to get your business started without huge costs, right? 12, 13% interest rates or clawbacks, or like it's tough. So, your first step is always on your own. And I would say the difference between the veteran's experience and someone who's in private enterprise is that you can build a business on the side when you're working in the private industry, and you can get it there to a point where you're ready to launch and go full time. Can't do that in the military. I mean, we're ready for deployment, and we really have to be careful about what outside interests we have for conflict of interest and our time management. So there's some veterans that have been able to start little businesses, but I would say that's the exception, not the norm.
Thank you. I'm an entrepreneur, and I want to be able to understand, and I want to look at the different possibilities for support. And I do know that it is difficult, and I just wanted to be sure that it's not because you're fragile or that they were concerned because of that. So I just wanted to be sure. So in risk management, and this should be included in the report, that we need to recognize veterans and having access to credit. I had a really hard time with my own business, and I still have a bit of a hard time, and I think I understand, but we need to understand what you're going through. And now moving on to retired Corporal Lisa. That's incredible. The minister met with you this summer. You remind me of Captain Jocelyn Dimitri. I don't know if you know him with Hero Lodge. And you remind me of that person. And you're in the National Capital Region right now, and you use your pension money. You don't receive any funding, even though you have been able to show the zoo therapy, the positive impacts that you've had. Why not? Well, we're a private enterprise, and so, well, people say, if I give you any money, you'll pocket it. And some veterans will even say that. They'll be jealous. You're a private enterprise. Yeah, but you can see the impact that I have. And they're often the ones benefiting, but they say, well, you're a private enterprise. We're excluded. And I can even go as far as to say that when I purchased this business in 2019, just before the pandemic, I was exiting the armed forces in July, and I purchased the business in September. And as you know, we just want to be able to leave. Yeah, I see that your service animal is agreeing with you. Yes. And when it came time for tax season, and as you know, we're paid by Manulife, I had to give back $35,000 to Manulife, and I haven't even received that funding. I was told that I was not part of the program. Well, that should also be automatic if we leave with PTSD. We shouldn't have to apply to receive 15% of our salary. So I missed out on 15% of my salary for the first year. I still haven't received that money. It's still in talks. And I refunded $35,000 to Manulife that Veterans Affairs never reimbursed me for. And I'm not the only entrepreneur to have faced that. That is also something that needs to be taken note of. When we leave the forces, we're told, well, no worries. If you need it, Veterans Affairs will reimburse you. But that's not the case. We're told that we weren't members of the program, but it should be automatic. We have to fill out so many forms. We're so exhausted. We just want to get out. That was going to lead me to taking my own life. And I'm not the only one. There are many. We're trying to find a way to continue to serve, but adding layer after layer of documents, knowing that we have PTSD, and we have a right to 15%. We have a right to receive certain things, and it should be automatic. And so whatever I try to do, I have to pay out of pocket. I apologize, Miss Cyr. I have to follow the clock here. We have about 8 minutes left because we are going to move in camera for our next panel of witnesses. So I just wanted to ensure that everyone had time. So let's go with 2 minutes. We'll start with 2 minutes, and if we can continue, we will, but we'll start with 2 minutes for everyone. We'll start 2 minutes for Mr. Promusi.
I want to thank all the witnesses for their service and for their candor today. I had dinner the night before last with a young woman who's considering RMC after graduation, and I can't help but contrast her sort of bright-eyed optimism with the sobering testimony that we've heard today. And so, Mr. Zarabecki, I want to ask you, when you started in the Canadian Armed Forces, did you realize that you would be starting over again when you left?
Well, I think the one caveat is that most of us that join the Canadian Armed Forces, especially around the time of Afghanistan, I mean, there's something a little bit wrong with us to begin with, right? So you're putting yourself in harm's way. For me, it was I didn't really have a good economic outlet at the time. I was a 22-year-old kid making $10 an hour, so I didn't know what the economic future would hold after my service, but it was the best job I could get at the time. And I think many of us, you know, we do join for honor and service and all of those things, but it's also a paycheck at the time too. We don't really have a plan. You know, you sort of plan halfway through.
So thank you for that. And can you just elaborate in the short period of time we have left? Can you elaborate on the gaps that exist between the employment supports that VAC offers and what veterans actually need, either to get hired or to start a business after they're discharged?
Yeah, I would say my experience was the supports in place were to get me a job, right? We don't want homeless veterans, so it's whatever gainful employment we can get, let's shove you in there so that we can get you sort of off the docket and you can provide for your families. It's not about success, it's not about growth, it's not about investment, it's not about how good you can be or how high you can achieve. It's about the minimum standard and filling that.
So, go ahead.
I promise we'll try to come back for 2 minutes. For 2 minutes, Mr. Casey.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thanks to our witnesses for being with us, and thank you for your service to your country. I'd like to bring Ms. Mondu into the conversation. In preparing for this meeting, I saw that you had written a book called
Hit the Ground Leading.
Hit the Ground Leading. I know it was some time ago, and I must confess I have not read it. Can you tell us whether that kind of forms the basis of the 3 very precise recommendations you gave us?
Well, I guess you could say it does, because the book is very much about the value of what we learn in the military to thrive as leaders or new recruits in wartime scenarios. So the readiness, the training to lead, et cetera, et cetera. So that book was very much about what I learned in the military that I felt could be translated in the business world, and was part of the company that I then built after, and built leadership programming around that in the defense sector, in the tech sector, et cetera, after I served at BlackBerry. So not sure if I'm answering your question, but certainly the value, and Madame Cyr and Sebenaki both spoke about it, of the skills we come away with was much around what that book translated into the business world.
All right, thank you. I appreciate the very specific recommendations. If I can just touch on the very first one, you talked about a one-stop shop. What would it look like?
Well, particularly focusing on entrepreneurship, I think an accelerator, something that could enable, the accelerator is a great model. It would be focused on military veterans transitioning into the world of entrepreneurship, just like the accelerators do for business people or younger kids coming out of university that have AI degrees and want to run companies. None of us know how to be an entrepreneur, and very quickly you get a master's degree in it.
Thank you, Madame Mondu. I'm so sorry. As I explained, I am the very bad clock keeper. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. 1 minute et demie, et après on va retourner.
1.5 minutes, and then we're going to go back to the Conservatives. Ms. Gaudreau. Chair, I would rather make a comment. I wanted to say that I see you and I hear you, and I know that there are veterans who are listening to us. It's a matter of will and recognition. And I think that we have everything there. We're being asked to understand, to assist. You're having to carry out a second fight after finishing your service. We have all the information that we need, and I see a bit of hope. The current government is talking a lot about investment, and that's great, because when we're talking about entrepreneurship and investing in people like you who have so much talent and resilience and capacity, well, I think that even the minister is hearing us, and I think things will change. Because I am saddened to hear that you're talking about it, but things aren't changing, and I think that's unacceptable. And so I wanted to thank you for being here and for sharing your story with us. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Gaudreau. Our other guests have arrived, but if we can, perhaps 1 minute. Mr. Tolmie, and then the Liberals for a minute.
To our witnesses, and thank you for your service. In your testimonies today, what really stood out to me is the disparity in risk tolerance. In a nation asking you to go somewhere and serve overseas, and for you to be able to put your life on the line. But when it comes to you releasing, there's zero safety net and a lack of risk tolerance in a nation willing to support you in your next venture. And I'd like for you to be able to share a bit more, Mr. Zarabicki, Fraser, on your thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, thank you, Fraser. You're absolutely right. There is this disparity in risk tolerance. The government definitely needs to shoulder some of the responsibility of transitioning veterans and do whatever we can collectively as a nation to support those veterans. I'm not here today for myself. I'm here for all those other veterans that are transitioning in the future. They're going to need us.
And last minute, Mr. Casey.
Back to Ms. Mondeau. In some of your writings, you're clearly a champion of DEI, and in your testimony today, you indicated that DEI should be expanded to include veterans. I'd be interested in your reflections on the current state of DEI internationally, given what's happening to our South, and is this still something that needs to take up headspace in the minds of business leaders?
Well, if I could just focus specifically on the world of the military veteran, I did lead an organization that focused on military employment transition for a number of years with Canada Company. We worked across Canada with companies across Canada, their HR teams, and the importance of educating civilian HR leaders on the value of the military member from recruit to colonel. Was incredible and very powerful. We were working with big banks from RBC to entrepreneurial organizations that wanted to hire military members. So my recommendation is this isn't about DEI. This is about communicating people of all backgrounds and sexes who have gone and served around the world, risked their lives, learned leadership, had very expensive training, phenomenal leaders. You've just heard the two in the room today. And yet it's very difficult for an HR team inside a company to understand that value.
Thank you.
I will leave it there.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Mondeau. That will be concluding our first hour. Je vais suspendre la réunion pour passer
I'm going to suspend so that we can move in camera.
And again, thank you for your service to our country.
Thank you.
Thank you.